Right, we will begin, as they used to say. Good morning, folks, and how are you in this wonderful Friday? Well, I hope. We have an interesting hour before us now. Our friend, Dawnecia Palmer, will be speak to us even of the title Celebrating Life. Dawnecia.
Well, good morning. Are we still morning? Yes, just about. Good morning. And I appreciate the welcome and the invitation to talk with you again. Is there anybody here that wasn't here the last time that I spoke? No? Can you hear me clearly? Can everybody hear me clearly? Great. Well, thank you again for putting up with me if you did before. I like the title that you have chosen, Celebrating Life. So I do want to give thanks to Dr. I can't pronounce your last name. Is it Stanton?
Staden, yeah.
That's Staden.
Yeah.
Okay, because I hate it when people pronounce my name wrong. So that's why people call me Rev, It's Dawnecia. I won't tell you my middle name, that's even harder. And I'm glad I married into the name Palmer because my last name was a Spanish name and it was even harder. But yes, let's get on to the topic today, celebrating life. What a thing to celebrate, life. So I thought that today I would ask us all, I know we're not in like a church, but we are here in life. And I thought we'd start and I'd ask us all to be part of this, as I'm going to ask you to do next. And of course, you trust me not to ask you to do something that you wouldn't want to do anyway, right? That's good. I'm going to ask us to take a deep, grateful breath. But before we do that, just think about, I am here. Just to think about those words, 3 words, I am here. But with deep meaning, because there are so many that are not here today. And I don't mean the rest of the day, I mean right now. And so no matter what has happened in our life, and yes, it does matter, but just for this moment, let us all at one time just take a grateful breath for being alive, for being here right now. Is that all right? Okay. So I say after 3, so 1, 2, 3, just take a deep breath in and out. I am here right now. When we do that the next time, remember we're talking about celebrating life. This is us celebrating the fact that we are here. So we're going to just take a deep grateful breath, but really feel grateful. I sort of have this picture of this little girl, maybe this little girl in me that is so excited about being alive, and she would go, ooh. So just be animated with that next breath in, and let's do that together as a group. But when we're doing it, not yet, we're here. But just let's add a little bit to that and think about life as it is. For some, it's very difficult right now. For some, it's very painful. For some, today might be the wedding day, and so it's an exciting day. So we're just like Catholics, feeling our joy on behalf of life everywhere. And let's go take that deep breath after 3. 1, 2, 3, in and out. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me that. I like to do that ever so often with my congregation to get used to it. Oh, here she goes, the deep, grateful breath again. It's good sometimes to pause to be grateful. Celebrating life then. I think the word pops up, Thanksgiving. So we're grateful for the life here, right now, and for everyone. And I wanted to start off by thinking about peacemakers, what I do, why I do it, which I'm going to share. And because some of you have heard what I'm talking about before, it's going to sound a little repetitive, but I'm adding the flavor of celebrating life in the talk today. And starting off by saying, life is kind. Life is very kind. And I've come to know that personally, that life is kind. First, in a sort of protective way, that life is always trying to protect itself, to protect somebody else. That's why we do what we do, especially as Quakers. We think about peace and we think about protecting people. That is because that is life's chief aim, is to protect and to preserve. So, trying to make us better. We're always trying to make ourselves better, trying to make our communities better, and trying to better our world. But it's all down to life. Life is so kind. And all these things are expression, I feel, of life. Being protective, being preserving, and of course, being peaceful. Think about it, what it would be like celebrating a life that is peaceful. And I don't mean just our life, I mean life in the world today. And that's what we aim for each day that we wake up. Is it with fear? Oh, what we're gonna hear today? What has happened yesterday? And it goes on and on. But one of the ways that I launched out into Peacemakers Prayer Patrol, because that's what I want to talk to us about, was realizing this thing about life, the goodness, and that it is peaceful, and that not just for myself, not just for my family, but I wanted to reach out beyond myself, beyond my family, to my streets. Today, right today, as we're speaking, I'm not sure any who is here that heard about 3 weeks, just over 3.5 weeks. I would say probably, yeah, maybe 3.5 weeks. A man in his 40s was stabbed at a bus stop in Lower Eastern. Did you remember hearing about that? His name was Leon Phillips, and he was chased by 9 men, it says 8, 9 men, and was stabbed at a bus stop by some young people. Now, whether it was over drugs or whatever, it's a life. And that's what we're talking about. Sometimes when it's terrible like that, we think about the tragedy of the loss of life. But in general, it's just life that is so beautiful and so wonderful. And some people don't know about it. Or do they know about it and ignore it? And right today, it's that man's funeral. Right as we're talking, in fact, I was invited to go and to take part of that funeral because of the work we do on the street. I was supposed to give a little talk there. But I'd already promised this. So this was where God wanted me to be today. And it's exactly what I was going to talk about. The beauty of life, the beauty and the expense and the value of life. And so it went beyond myself, beyond loving my family, beyond wanting that peace for my family and for myself and experiencing it, to want it for my street. And I think sometime before we go to the world, we need to come back a bit closer, come a bit closer than community, because that's the next one people think about. After family, we normally think about communities, whether that community be church, whether it be our social group, or whether it be around our culture. But before that, there's something, anybody can tell me what that is? Our street, our neighbor. Love your neighbor as yourself. And they say, who is our neighbor? The whole world, indeed. But before we go as far as praying about Russia and praying about America and praying about Iran, we think about our street. And so that popped up. It was just there. So much was happening down in St. Paul's when we started in 2002. Guns was on the streets. Today we have knives. Not that it's better having knives, because we're finding out that people are just stabbing anywhere. A guy got stabbed in his leg. I actually met him while we were on patrol. And he got stabbed in the leg, and I'm just saying, thankfully, he's still alive. When I talked to him, he said somebody else got stabbed in the leg, just up a little bit more than where he was, cuts into an artery, and went, bled to death. And so life is really important and worth celebrating. And so we got, one of the way that we launch out into the world was through our bringing awareness of peace in a peaceful way. And you will agree with me that we have two, I would say, prominent and historical characters who did that at times of war and a time of great upheaval. And that was Mahatma Gandhi and indeed our Dr. Martin Luther King. They did that with voice. They did that with peaceful resistance, just being in the world. And you might say, what good did it do? Well, it brought about some changes. The changes we see today, like you and I are conversing. That was Dr. King's dream, wasn't it? That the little black boy and the little black girl would see beyond color and see that value of life and celebrate that in the way that we live respectful life. And as we do that, we're bringing equality. And with equality comes some type of justice. And so in 2002, when the police couldn't do anything, I mean, they tried their best, but something had to be done. I was on an airplane, and so I'll tell the story again. I was on an airplane, and so it's very important when I'm telling this story again. I think about when we were talking, somebody was telling me about how good it is to rest after the flight. Thank you for that. And I will take you up on that. I will rest, take time to rest. And I'll teach about it in church as well, because there's a few people that needs to know that they don't have to go straight back to work, So I was on the airplane and walking down to the loo, there was a person with the newspaper open, and on it it said, Bristol, the worst city in Europe. I didn't even look at the rest. I was like, nosy, isn't it? I was going down. I said, wow, Bristol. I just saw Bristol, the worst city in Europe for drugs, guns, and violence. And I was wearing my badge. It just goes to show a bit of pride is still there in it, even in the vicar. Bristol representative, because I'd gone to a conference in France, and I went in the loo and I took the badge off actually because of what I saw. Wow. Bristol, there I was talking to people about the love of God. Of course, prayer patrols had not started at the time. I had just gone to talk about equality and justice in France. I was like, what? That cannot be so. And we are God-fearing people. We have to do something about it. And it bothered me. I came back and I just thought, well, what else can we do? We have our churches, we have our meetings, we have prayer meetings, we try to live good lives, we have our children, we're doing our best, but is there really an area in Bristol that is the worst in Europe? I could not believe it, but my heart would not rest. And I just brought this out in prayer. I said, something needs to be done. I'm going down there. I'm going for myself. And so I went down with my weapons, the Bible and my collar. Normally the Bible is inside me, but the collar I put out, I think it's like a little protection, and it's a conversation starter and conversation stopper sometime when there's a lot of swearing going on. Especially by, these kids these days on the buses. Oh my goodness, the things that's going on. I don't say anything sometimes. I just sit. Shh, do you see the vicar is back now? Shh. Or something like that. Anyway, I went down into St. Paul's, and the first guy I approached, I saw him throw something away like that. Oh, okay. And I went up and I talked. I said, would anybody like prayer? That was my first words. Now, I must confess, was I scared? Yes. You wouldn't know, though. And I went up as if I was brave, and I said, does anybody want prayer? And the response was, what took you so long? Why haven't you come out of your church down here before? Now, I was living in Emerson Green. I was nowhere near. That was not my church area. It wasn't my home life area. I had just heard that this St. Paul's was the worst area in Bristol because of what was happening. And during the, before I went down, I looked to see what this story was about. And we could hear it in the news all the time at that time where, nearly every day there was a shooting. Drugs was just nonstop. It was terrible. And it was by these people that was called Yardies. They were Jamaican immigrants who had come over, overstayed, and to pay their way, actually. They were selling drugs. They were putting prostitutes on the street. It was bad things going on. Anyway, back to the story. This guy said, yes, pray for my grandmother. And that was my entrance in. Even what we call the worst sinner have there's a soft entrance, and his entrance was his grandmother. And so just please God, help me, I was saying inside when I closed my eyes, don't let anybody do anything to me. And I closed my eyes and I just prayed. What was in his heart why he would ask for his grandmother? He must love her. So I prayed as if I was him praying for his grandmother and just prayed love. And I look up and saw his moist eyes. I know I was, I touched something in there. And I realized that all these people were God's children. All these people just needed an opportunity to pray because he allowed me to pray with him. And I went along and it was like a supermarket. I'm just telling you, don't feel sorry for them at all. It was like a supermarket. If you didn't get the grade you want here, there was people lining every street going down. And that's how Prayer Patrol started, I went back and I said, we can make a change because they wanted prayer, one after the other, because apparently he was the leader and he had allowed me to pray. And so when I went to the next one, they were like, well, if he get prayer, I want prayer. And so I said, oh, he asked for grandmother. No, we don't want prayer. I said, well, he asked for prayer for his grandmother. Don't you want prayer? Oh, yeah, well, all right, then pray for my mom. And they all had other things to pray for. Of course, some wanted to be rich, isn't it? And some wanted to get rid of the government and get rid of the monarchy. Oh, gosh, they had all these different things. And you had to find little ways of praying around and not, praying anything bad. And so I came back and I thought, well, maybe the church could do something. And I sent out this message and made an invitation. And we had 20 odd ministers turned up at the Wesleyan Holiness Church in St. Paul's. But there was ministers from all around at the time. Canon Malcolm Winnegum from Pippin J was alive, and people from Reform Church. It wasn't just one church base. It was people, because that's the only platform I had at the time. Now we've gone wider from just calling it Prayer Patrol to City Safety Patrol, because we found out that even Muslims want to pray and make the streets safe. People who of no faith, but have a strong conviction that something needs to be done, wants to come out and do voluntary as well. And so we've moved from Prayer Patrol to City Safety Prayer and City Safety Patrols. And anyway, we brought these ministers together and he said, well, what we're going to do? And just you pick something. Sorry, I've got a thing of sweets here. And it's like picking something out of a hat, just we'll call them patrols. That's what we need to do. The police is policing. We need to do what the police is doing, but with prayer. Let's go out. We have a physical force. Let's do a spiritual force. But we can't do it on our own. At the time I was a chairman for the race forum at Bristol City Council. So I had a little clout. So from that position, I asked if I could see the chief of police and I would put the idea forward. Oh my goodness. So a meeting was arranged. Now, how am I going to take the head of the police they can't do it, but we are going to, just a few of us will bring the change. But I had a night, after they agreed, I had a night to put something together. And I must say, it is very foolish But I'm encouraging us, you know, and maybe this little video would go out, and maybe this will encourage somebody that even this little step of faith can go a long way. And we've proven it by when we went to see that chief of police with this little idea. And the little idea was very silly, actually. It was if you're in a big boardroom and each person was smoking. I know you're saying, where's she going with that? And, you know, just the whole meeting, the whole day, just smoking. But if you went, so I'm talking to the chief now, and I said, if you went home to your wife, who is allergic to the scent of cigarette smoking, this is very bad for her health. It will damage her health. Now, she wouldn't know anything you talk about in the meeting, but her health would know exactly the topic of the meeting. Not only would her health know it, but she would suffer. And you would have a hard time, wouldn't you? Well, he was like, he didn't know where I was going with the story, but he listened. And how was I to know that that is exactly the situation with his wife? And immediately he stood up, he said, no, carry on, man. Let's hear the rest. And then I was saying, even as that would make an effect, to affect somebody who wasn't there, could you imagine if prayer could so concentrate in an area, it would actually do something in the atmosphere that would actually have an impact on the people in that area. So what I'm suggesting is that we will be out in force morning, noon, and night. You can go out in between, and we will go out with you. Actually, me trying to tell the police this, oh my goodness. Afterwards, when I thought about, because I hadn't planned for some of the questions he was going to ask, how would I know? I said, when you go out, we'll be in. When we are out, you guys, and together, we'll cover the street, and we'll create such an impact of intention of peace and goodwill in the air. And you know, it wasn't the words that did it. It was the fact that his wife had this problem with her breathing in anything to do with the nicotine. It would affect her health. And so he knows that all the drugs and whatever that they could not do. I mean, it was silly. He said, what do you want? So I said, oh, we need some jackets to, you know, to make ourselves visible. Remember, there was no such thing as prayer patrol. So we had to just think, what could we do? We want little pouches because we don't want to carry money out. Because if you carry money out and somebody come up to us and we give them money, they're going to know we have money, we could be robbed. So we can say to people that's coming out, you will never be robbed. Nobody will come and think we have money and attack us. Because in the training, we will say, you can't carry money out on you. But we'll carry a pouch, and that is for our phone. We were asking for walkie-talkies at the time. It didn't give us that. It was too expensive. And we'll take a pen and paper, and we'll record, and we'll feedback. But what we want is an officer. We want one of your officers to just monitor the area and monitor the difference. And I'll bring the story to a close that side. We had an officer, and his name was Inspector at the time, Inspector Chris Weigel. He is now Commander Chris Weigel, not in Bristol. He was in Bristol, and now he is the one further down. What is it, Devon and all that? He is there now. Anyway, where was I? Lost my train of thought. Where was I? Where was I? Yes. So he gave us these our things, and we went out, and that became public in the press and everything. People saw that we were going to go out, and I think a lot of people came out on patrols at the time. It was a lot. I mean, if you see 20 people going out, and we were out there in the morning, we were called morning patrol, afternoon patrols, evening and midnight. Now you might say, what happens in midnight? That is the most dangerous time it was. And the morning patrol. In the morning was when the drugs was being dropped. Well, you see, when we started, our uniform looked so much like the police. So when we would go out early morning and these drops were coming, we call them drops, wonderful cars, and these guys, you know, didn't look like the guys who were on the street. They were different color skin. They were, you know, posh people coming. But when they saw the police, not the police, but it was us, you would hear cars turning around and going back. This was just interesting because we had so many patrols. We were in different locations at different times. And, you know, we just continue and continue. And there was a big change. Within 3 months, we had, and this was actually in the police newspaper, and in their thing, 60% reduction in crime in those areas. And so no human being can take praise for that. First, it was a silly idea. And a thing as noble as prayer making a difference, can it be possible? Well, we have, and it's now 23 years on. So what's different? Well, unfortunately, we did clean up that area. There was a lot of things to be discussed. It wasn't just about people selling drugs on the street. There was need for education. There was need for spaces for people to go. They didn't have the St. Paul's Learning Center. We had to fight for that. We had to fight for gardens. So we were saying people were loitering on the street and doing all that stuff because they didn't have any gardens. Now, every home in St. Paul's, the flats there, they have gardens. They have a learning center. They have more patrols, police in the area. The streets are cleaned up. I mean, it's changed. People are now begin to move down from Redland into the area, and the whole area is changed. I heard recently that houses on Newfoundland Road are so expensive. It's borderline houses on the border of Clifton. I was like, no, it's impossible. Such is the area, and we do not take credit for that. We give credit to God, to life itself. So today, when we talk about celebrating life, we think why we went out there was to save life. It wasn't just to stop drug selling, but it's what was the drugs being sold, what was the damage was being done. It was that lives were being ruined. Today, we have a different type of animal on you know, devil we're fighting, as you could say, and that is young people using knives, not seeing the value in life. It's just so easy, just so easy. When it recently, I'm not sure if you hear about the red and blue zones. This is what's going on now. A message being sent around to schools that one school must be against another school. And the threat is, we're going to fight you with knives. I've never heard anything like, why, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, yes, I'm not saying you shouldn't fight if you want to. I'm not up for fighting. But years ago, we would, you know, we'd use fists and stuff like that. But why knives? Anyway, thankfully, so far, we've been able to deal with things, with parents coming together and have really realized that if this is the case, your child is not safe just because you live in one area or because you're of some social status, because it was schools from one area to another area. And so the holidays coming up, this summer holiday is coming up, very crucial. So I invite us all to really pray because life is very, very important. The good thing about going out on the patrol is that we're able to meet the perpetrators. We're able to talk to them. And for some reason, because we're not threatening them, we're not really telling them it's bad. We're just out there to bring an awareness. We do have a big old sign that says, say no to knives and yes to lives. No more knives, no more lives. Say yes to life. So we have this big neon sign, big as this, you know, and we carry that through areas, whether a crime has just been committed or not. And the greatest thing we're trying to do is to reduce fear of crime. Because believe it or not, unless you read the police statistics, you won't know that fear of crime is high, just as high, if not higher, than actual crime itself. And fear of crime, unfortunately, bring about crime because people are then trying to do something to try to protect themselves. young people today are young and old, trying to carry weapons to protect themselves, not realizing, listen, excuse me, if you carry a knife to protect yourself and somebody come, are you saying you're going to use the knife? Would, even if that person used a knife, would they kill you? Or will you kill them first? So this is really about seeing how valuable life is. Well, we get the chance to speak to just a few, just a drop in the bucket. But if we can help to change one person or to bring awareness to just one family or one child, we feel that it will make a difference. And that's why we're out there in the rain, in the snow, trying to make a difference every day. So thank you for listening. If you have any questions, I'd like to answer. Also, before I go, I'd like to invite you to be part of Peacemakers Prayer Patrol. You said, no, I can't go out. Here is the catch. Everybody can be a part of this. By praying for us, you become what we call our shield. We need more shield from other walks of life, but just knowing that there are people that are praying for us. We call it sending light and love through our prayers, through your intention. Just taking 5 minutes, 1 minute, 2 minutes, writing it down, write down Peacemakers Prayer Patrols or City Safety Patrols somewhere. And every time you say that, just say, whether sage or just feel it, send us some love. It goes a long way. Even as we are out there on the street, we need that backup. And knowing that there are people that is thinking about us, that cares about the streets and care about life out there. I'm coming to a close now. We're going to Korea, South Korea, not the North. And indeed, to have conversation about the North and South coming together, that's an impossible task at the moment, but yet we are going to do some peace talks there about the world, the condition of the world. We did do one earlier in November when stuff was really, really tentative there. Is it making a difference? I don't know, but we have to keep going. And the reason we were invited to go is because Peacemakers was nominated to be an ambassador for peace with the UN back in 2007, representing Bristol, of course, on England. Sometimes I think, how can I represent England? Look how big England is. And so do remember us in prayer. Any questions?
Dawnecia, she said you were going to America as well. That's pretty brave of you with what's going on in America today.
Well, I know, but I think there is something greater. And I had written down something, we are visible, but we represent something invisible, an invisible power. And it is not different when we went down to Gaza, and it was terrible. It was at the height of war, and they had a ceasefire, and so we had gone in. And the day that we had the talks, we had gone into the Knesset, and then we went to the place of it was just after Yasser Arafat's death. I actually sat in his seat. I didn't know that women wasn't supposed to sit in his seat. It's not because they don't want women to sit in his seat. It was because just in case they were on menstruating. But I didn't know, so I sat there anyway. It was empty. And it was at the top. So later on, I had to apologize for that. But we were, just to say, we went there at that time and prayed for a time. We did see a little bit of peace because of the interaction. It's not just me, it's from a wide walk of life. So though personally I could say I can't even be me going. I just have to represent peace and represent life and know or believe that life will protect me and bring me back to my family and to you. Um, and that that we can make a difference. So going to America, one of the person, another minister, she's pulled out another ambassador because she said it's so tentative because recently, even England and America had a little thing going there. So, but no, I put my trust in the higher, you know, in life itself.
Thank you, David.
Yeah, Dawnecia, that's so inspiring and uplifting. Thank you so much. I, when you were starting to talk, I remember when I arrived in Bristol, I had to. I was going to some meeting, and I was getting off a bus or something, and I had to walk across Bristol, and I said, asked somebody for directions from the bus station
Oh my
to St. Werburgh's, and they said, "Oh, you can't get there from here. You'd have to go through St. Paul's."
God.
And so that was my baptism in Bristol, was
Yeah.
learning about the tensions in society. And it turned out I walked anyway, and I did walk through St. Paul's, and I was offered drugs. Uh, so what you're talking about is, a very real experience for people, and you're such a positive attitude to all these things, that something can be done, that we can do this. What can we do? We can do this. And it's just inspiring and uplifting to you're a kind of tonic as you speak, but that's spreading light, Dawnecia. It's really beautiful that you inspire the people on the streets when you go out, and in your congregation, and in groups like this when you talk about what's possible.
Thank you so much.
Beautiful.
Nobody's asked me, well, what is it like as in an individual thing? I didn't share that. So one of the things that we train people about is to become prayer rather than something you do. It's who you are. So you embody what you're wanting to achieve, which is the hardest part of it, is to remember that it's not you, it is what you represent, what you're representing out there. And so it helps us to how we pray. So for instance, it's not just about the crime, it's about even people's health. We are on the streets, not just for crime, but people's health. And sometimes, I know the way we know this is that people come up to us as if we're doctors. And they literally will ask you to pray. People have asked us to pray for cats. A cat was hit. He wasn't quite dead yet. And could you pray for the cat? They were saying it's suffering so much. We've called the police. It hasn't come. Could you come? And they're almost dragging us. We're like, should we really be going? Is this a trap? And you go, and it's, we just have to pray for about the cat because you don't want the person, and you just think, oh, we don't want any suffering because God loves animals. And it just so happened that this person was an animal right person. And I was just to hear a minister praying about a cat was like, for them, their entrance into accepting that there is a God and something is possible. So it's a privilege for us, really, rather than something to be it humbles us. That's what I'm trying to say. It's a very humbling thing to do. And sometimes you do feel that you want to take praise, but you're always being pushed to stay humble and remember that it's life itself, God, that lives us. Thank you.
Yeah, that was a Interesting.
Mm.
Now, as I said, it would be, friends. Would anybody like to ask any questions, make any comments?
Just so enthralling to listen. It really was, and I sort of sitting here thinking, I wish I could help. And then I remember something you'd said before, which is that, yes, I can help. I can pray. I can send my prayers. And I have actually written down Peacemaker Patrol to remind me to add you to my prayers. And,
Thank you. I will share that with the group. They will be so happy. Oh my goodness, when I say we now have prayers coming from the Quaker, specific. Thank you.
Well, I was thinking about that, Dawnecia, and that is that Quakers talk about holding things in the light, and as you were talking, I was thinking about that and thinking, you're out there in the streets shining the light. It's not a silent witness as part of a kind of circle practice amongst Quakers. You're taking the light out into the streets, and you can really feel the light shining from you. It's beautiful.
Thank you. But our batteries need more power, so we need your prayers. Because when we are out there, we're not really praying, we're just going on the prayers of those who are supporting us. So thank you very much.
Right. Very, very much true what's going on in the world at the moment. I just got, Ray mentioned a book before we started, and I just had a book arrived in the post yesterday called Stellar. And, and it's about shining a light on humanity, humanity shifting to a higher level. So, stars are the biggest physical lights in our universe, but we have inner lights that we can shine and take with us in the street and share with others. It's beautiful.
Very nice. Thank you. Can I know what the books are called, please? The two books?
Oh, this is a book called Stellar, and it's by two men called James R. Beebe and Tony Sieber, and they have a website called Rethinking Humanity.
Oh, I know that.
And it's about humanity shifting from civilizations that extract and that compete to civilizations that are. They're saying we've got the opportunity to shift from an old form of civilization to a new form, and it's not. It may not come across as a spiritual vision, but it's a vision of practically shifting. It's very relevant for the solar energy that I'm involved in, of course.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And you mentioned another book, Ray?
Well, no, my book wasn't about the talk today. It was just a book which I'd found
But
about.
what was it called?
It was called Inventing Wonderland.
Okay.
And it was about kind of Victorian and Edwardian authors who wrote a lot about childhood and the fact that no one that books like that aren't written anymore, and we see childhood very differently to the Victorian authors that have, and and how they lived, and where it's a much more a world where things are so different from the Victorian times of being little adults that nowadays we have children, youth who spend a lot more time on their mobiles and on their internet and on this lot, and not so much time coming together as physically people, because the days of the youth clubs and all that lot seem to have gone somewhat these days, and children are becoming much more isolated than they were before. When I was a lad, and I'm sure when other friends here were children, you went to youth clubs and things like that, but it doesn't happen anymore. Children are more living on the internet and being, told some rather nastier type of things than they were before.
Maybe we find a way back.
Yes, as we hear, there's going to be shifting humanities there, rethinking. Thank you. Thank you both for sharing both books.
Bless you.
Right then, friends. Let me tell you of what's happening next week. It's from the 17th, and it's After Prison Care by Richard Drake.
Okay.
Richard has spoken to us a couple of times, I think a time before. So, yes. And may I say, and this is something that Patsy and I have been discussing, is the fact that Patsy, in a sense, and me trailing on her wonderful coattails. Yeah, I nearly got a grin there, Patsy.
I'm puzzling over what you said. I'm sorry.
And the fact that we would like someone else to come along and start finding more people to come to these talks, come and run these talks virtually, because Patsy and I have done it since the inception of COVID. So, we are running out of people, folks, and we need other people to come along and enliven it, to actually give us different people to come.
We need inspiration.
Time for a rethink and a revival.
Yes, yes.
Great.
Anyway, that's it today, folks.
That's us all. Thank
Go
you.
have fun.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much
Thank you,
indeed.
Dawnecia.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye, everybody.